100 years ago, Nikola Tesla discovered a healing technology that threatened the entire pharmaceutical industry. The day he died, the government seized everything. For 100 years, this technology was hidden. Until now, plasma is back. Tesla Club, tzla.club.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Monday's episode of Trending here on Iconic. Well, this morning's show is going to have a number of stories that all kind of intertwine to a degree, and they're all going to cover a similar theme. And the theme we're going to cover this morning that we're going to talk about is the game chess. Okay, because in chess, every move you make 2 or 3 steps ahead, ideally. You think, if I do this, my opponent's going to do that, then I'll do this, then they might do that, then I'll do that. You're trying to always be one step ahead. You're not just playing each move in isolation. And that analogy pretty much sums up this cult that run the world. They don't just make a move. An event doesn't just happen without them thinking, right, if this happens, the public will react like this, which will allow us to then do that, which will then justify this, which will then... That's how it works. These things are knock-on effects. They are very long planned. They're certainly not organic. So when this invasion or airstrikes began in Iran, all the catastrophe that we've seen, the rising oil prices, the destruction of different parts of the Gulf, attacks on energy sites, the energy scarcity, the food prices, the Strait of Hormuz being blocked, all these things would have been known well in advance that they were all going to be effects of starting strikes on Iran. So the fact that these people are running around now going, this has happened, oh, what are we going to do? We need to deal with this. You knew that was going to happen because that's part of the plan. I've said this last week, and Gareth said it as well. The amount of widespread disruption and chaos caused by conflict is firstly long known. Conflicts always affect people that have nothing to do with them on the surface because of the knock-on effects. And also, you know that part of the world ships out X amount of oil and resources, and you know that particular bit of water is used daily by hundreds of ships to distribute that energy around the world. So if you create a conflict in that region, of course you're going to create chaos. It was madness for anyone to not think that this was something that was planned and that all of a sudden they're taken aback and surprised by this. So with that in mind, we're going to talk about some of the things that are happening now, some of the things that are being rumoured to be coming next, some of the things that we have been told would never happen. However, if certain events happen, all of a sudden maybe they do happen. So that's what I mean by chess, creating a situation where actually this move I want to make, well, I can only make it if they do that, so I'm going to do that. So the first story, we've seen a lot of back and forth over the weekend between Trump and Iran to do with the Strait of Hormuz and opening it up. The US or Trump, in his typical, boisterous tactics, has said that he will obliterate Iran's power plants within 48 hours, which is, I think, another 24 hours from today. I think that's tomorrow that will be. This story came out yesterday. If they don't open up the Strait of Hormuz, Iran have then turned around and said, okay, well, they will obliterate all US energy infrastructure and resources and interests in the Gulf region if they do that. So if those two things happen, what would that do? Well, if you think oil prices are high now, if you think energy scarcity now is something that we should be concerned about, well, imagine if you blow up all of those energy sites in both Iran and neighbouring Gulf countries where the US have interests. Do you think it would send prices down? Do you think it would make people more secure? Or do you think it would cause more chaos and send prices even higher that would then have a follow-on effect to you and me when we open up those energy bills? I certainly think it would be the latter. The other thing it would do is it would ensure that this conflict continues. The conflict that at the back end of last week was apparently winding down, according to Trump, and the US were way ahead of schedule on their objectives. The conflict that was going to last 4 weeks. Well, it's been 4 weeks, I believe, or certainly close to 4 weeks. It doesn't sound like this is going anywhere, does it? There's also now talks of boots on the ground, 250 Marines heading to Iran from the US. Certainly, again, doesn't sound like this conflict's winding down, does it? But it's never meant to. We've covered this many a time. This isn't meant to be a conflict that ends. This is meant to be a conflict that's continuous. It's constantly giving you reasons to be scared, constantly giving you reasons to look over your shoulder, to be nervous about whether it's fighting on your streets or whether it's opening those energy bills, whether it's going to that supermarket. It's keeping you in a state of fear. And the fact that you've got a man with the temperament, to sound like Hillary Clinton, a man with the temperament of Donald Trump in charge of this, or on the surface in charge of this. Of course, deep down, he's not. He's being controlled from the other side. I can understand why it makes people feel very, very nervous, because you've got a guy who takes to social media and caps lock posts, which everybody knows is just a sign of Twitter rage, to tell you what he's going to do. And it's going to involve the destruction of, well, essentially the destruction of the West. It is sobering to sit here and think that all these things are going on. And it is very easy to sit here and think all these things are going on and we don't have any influence upon them. But we do. Because it's very simple. When the propaganda is as strong as it's being, they know they're losing. Because you don't need to be as heavy with your propaganda if you're winning the argument. You don't need to lie to people if you're winning the argument. You don't need to hide data. You don't need to make things up. Because it's obvious, and it's abundantly obvious to people what the right side of an argument is. But when actually people aren't landing on your side of the argument, people are starting to question what you're saying, you've got to lie. Or you do the right thing and admit you were wrong. Or just do the right thing. But as we know, these politicians don't generally know what that means. Or if they do, they choose to then do the exact opposite. Certainly when you're owned like Trump. But the fact they're lying, the fact this propaganda is so high, the fact the abuse of anybody that asks a basic question is so high, that just goes to show they are terrified because they are losing the narrative. They're massively losing the narrative. This is a war that nobody wants, based on a lie nobody believes. And it's destroying the economy of the West in many ways. People are worried. People are scared for so many different reasons. And you've got to justify that. And you can't, because there isn't a justification. And people have had enough. And it's very, very positive to see. So new strikes have been reported in Tehran overnight. New strikes have been reported in Tel Aviv overnight. The Iranian president, Mahmoud Pezeshkian, if that's all right, I apologise if it's not, says US threats to strike Iran's energy infrastructure show the desperation, adding that the Strait of Hormuz is open to all those except those who violate Iranian borders. He says, we firmly confront delirious threats on the battlefield. So, this, like I say, this is not ending anytime soon, is it? This is a back and forth. There's also a lot of evidence from what I've been reading that the Israel's air defense system and the US air defense systems in the area are running out of interceptor missiles, and that Iran has pretty much held back all of its more sophisticated weaponry so far in this conflict. So if that's true, and essentially they've been using these drones to deplete the air defense systems, then what happens when those interceptor missiles run out? There's obviously a lot of potential for quite big devastation on US resources and other areas of the Gulf and also Israel. Is that what's meant to happen? I don't know. I don't know. I think we're looking at a systematic destruction of the West, and that's what Donald Trump's job was. So if the US essentially, metaphorically, get their arse handed to them in this conflict, that certainly would take one step towards doing that, because there's been this long talk of World War III between Russia, China, Iran, North Korea maybe, against the West. And there's always this perception, because of the first two world wars, that the West's meant to win. Well, I'm not sure if the West's meant to win this one. Because if you look at the society that they want to create, which is a social credit system, incredibly high surveillance, control, fascist state, well, I could think of two countries that would fit that mold, one more extreme than the other. And they're not in that West. They're North Korea and they're China. In China in particular, where you have the social credit system, you have surveillance absolutely everywhere. The state owns basically everything. You criticize the state, you can't travel. You step out of line, you're retired, shall we say. You saw their response during COVID. It was brutal and extreme. That sounds pretty much like the control system that they want. It's technologically a very, very advanced society with facial recognition technology everywhere and so on. So wouldn't a very easy way for this control system to put out the world it wants is to have the West destroyed? Have China essentially win, not that there would be any winners, win this, and then impose that will across the rest of the world by imposing the system that they already have. Sounds far-fetched, but is it really? So would it shock you if this conflict turned and you saw destruction of nations like Israel and the US? And people watching this may go, well, I thought Israel was one of the countries in control. Well, on one level, yes. But if you look at the prophecies, which these people are lunatics and are using as justification for what they're doing now, Israel gets destroyed in the end. So that wouldn't surprise me one bit if that's what happens, or if that's what's designed to happen. Because everyone is playing their part. Those controlling Iran control America, control Israel, control China, control Russia. When you get to the very top, maybe not at immediate government level, of course, but when you get to the very top of the people pulling the strings, it's one group of people. You could probably get them all in this small room that I'm recording this in. That's how few there is when you get to the very, very top. And I don't believe there is any what you would call rogue nations that are not coming under there. There'll be ones that they maybe don't influence as much as others, and that's when you might see coups and leaders taken out. Maybe Maduro wasn't quite playing ball. Maybe Saddam Hussein, maybe Gaddafi, maybe they weren't. Maybe Assad, maybe they weren't quite playing ball as much as they were meant to, and that's why they were targeted. But I believe that this cult has control of all these nations on one level. So what we're seeing is all of those nations essentially working together to bring about an outcome. You've got good cop, bad cop analogies and scenarios to create conflict. You've got the side you're meant to like, the side you're meant to not, the provoker, the provocationist, and the good guy coming to spread democracy across the world. It's all theatre at the end of the day. It's all theatre. None of it's real. Right, we're going to continue with that theme of chess, of how England and the UK have so far not been particularly involved in this conflict, but how we're starting to see the sea droppings of stories, of information, of threats, of fear-mongering that is trying, in my opinion, to get British people to be more engaged with this conflict and more on page with going and getting involved and setting the foundation for what may come or not come to justify that involvement. So we're going to continue on iconic.com and go through those stories, as well as some more settler violence over in the West Bank, as well as quite a bizarre story here from London that's happened overnight as well. So I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching with me on Twitter or YouTube. Bye for now.
In 1943, the government seized Nikola Tesla's most dangerous invention, a healing technology that threatened Big Pharma's entire empire. They buried it for 100 years, but it's back, and over 1,000 people worldwide are using it right now. When you join Tesla Club, you get your own Tesla plasma device, 5 times more powerful than the original Violet Ray and built to last. You join a private Telegram group where members share breakthroughs daily. Stroke recoveries, cancer reversals, chronic pain gone in minutes. These aren't stories. These are yesterday's posts. You get lifetime support from people who've been where you are. Technical guidance, therapeutic protocols, a group that actually understands. And you get access to hundreds of documented experiments, real members, real results, real transformations. No prescriptions, no waiting for permission, no begging doctors who don't believe you. Just you, your machine, and a movement taking health sovereignty back. We're Tesla Club, private science club for self-directed healing. Visit tzla.club. Join the revolution.
Plasma.
It's back!
Don't mention the reptiles, Dave.
Even less is said about the Grey Pope, who some believe to be the true ruling power in the Vatican.
Humans emitting a MAC address.
All of them had Bluetooth signals.
I've never seen it before.
Queuing up to transition their children.
This is the ultimate suicide cult.
What if the symbols around us every day aren't just ornamental?
We lost 1,000 years of history.
What if they're instruction?
That state of awareness is not manipulatable.